Welcome to the Evening Review, Mr. Smith. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Ernst & Young recently released an audit report, and the Namibia Press Agency reported that there was issues related to misrepresentation of your financial statements and so forth. Looking now back at that audit report, what is the response of TransNamib to what was contained therein?
Yeah, I think you have got the information correct, unless I don't have what you are saying now. But EY is busy with an investigation sum up based on information or terms of reference that they were provided.
And then, Mr. Smith, recently our newspaper came across a letter that you had penned in which you had stated intent to retrench upwards of 300 employees. What necessitated the intended retrenchments, and where does TransNamib find itself now in terms of carrying out the retrenchments, if they are to go through?
Yeah, firstly, let me state categorically that the information that was provided to the media was unfortunately confidential information. And we really regret that information like that has gone to the public while we were in of a process, and not even the retrenchment. So retrenchment is the wrong terminology to be used here. There is a process that we are looking in terms of a voluntary process with staff. But of course, there's a process to be followed in terms of the labor law and the requirements thereof. And we were just at the first steps in terms of this. What I can also state is that this is in line with the company's business plan that was approved already in 2018.
So now, in terms now, has the company looked at shifting the employees, for lack of a better word, to other business units within TransNamib? What are the incentive, and what are you looking to to come to the optimal human resource structure within TransNamib?
Yeah, for us, of course, the business changed over a period of time, and that's what the business plan at the time when we established it or got it approved is really the core business versus the non-core. So for us, we have been focusing on making sure that we remain with our core business, which is train operations. And this is part of that process. So there was a last phase which we did not conclude in 2018 that we are now re-looking at. And of course, in terms of where is our business now, because the number of people must also speak to the business that we are operating as TransNamib, and also to make sure that this process that we address efficiency within the company.
Would you say, to what extent would you say the COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact on this issue where you were looking at the human resources component of your employees?
Yeah, so between 2018 and 2019, we had a slight improvement in terms of our position as TransNamib. But then when the first lockdown came in April 2020, it really affected our business negatively. So for that first month, which was April 2020, we lost about 50% of our revenue, which of course for a company who's struggling and who's trying to turn around, it has been difficult because now you've lost so much of your revenue. So how do you improve? So it had a significant impact in terms of for us to turn around our business. And that's why that had also an impact in terms of our original decision and also now what do we do in terms of moving forward. So last year was definitely not a good year for us.
What impact, if you're now looking at the financial, your financial results, or in terms of how the business has been doing, if one were to assess the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, what impact has it had on your financials and the ability of TransNamib to continue as a going concern?
Yeah, so the big problem with the COVID impact is that we were supposed to grow much higher than what the sort of financial result that we had for the last year. So we were actually losing out at least about 25% of what we were supposed to grow. And that was the plan, because for us, coming back from a situation that in 2018, when I started at TransNamib, between for about 7 years before that, the company made losses of about 4 billion Namibia dollars. So our cash situation is very critical as a company in terms of making sure that there is a level of continuous improvement. So that level of continuous improvement we could not achieve last year, and this had a ripple effect in terms of not being able to move sufficient freight as planned, and then of course the revenue earnings that we were supposed to have.
At this point in time, to ensure the continued operations of TransNamib, are you looking at approaching either government or the commercial banks with a view to a bailout? And if so, what are the amounts that you are currently looking at?
Yeah, we had several discussions with our shareholder on potential funding. But the extent to what we require as TransNamib in terms of our legacy issues, we cannot, of course, get from government. What we have done operationally for the next 6 months, we have started with a program to get additional rolling stock capacity, especially from a locomotive perspective, in terms of what we need to put in place to help us increase at least the freight and the revenues. So we have leased now about 4 locomotives. The first one has arrived, and the other 3 is supposed to arrive within the next month, which will help us in terms of towards the end of the year to get to a level where we will improve the current business situation and also, of course, our revenue.
If one were to look at the rolling stock now that you are referring to, in terms of the capacity output, what are we looking at? By what extent would this improve your output as a company in terms of the tonnages that are being moved?
Yeah, so with the current locomotives that we are working with, the 4 that we're going to lease, we are also busy with another process to lease an additional 5. So with those 9 locomotives, should have all, hopefully we should have all in place by December or latest February next year. With that, it will assist us in terms of increasing our current volumes with at least 25%, which then should put us in a better perspective of our cash flow situation, which is dire-some at the moment.
And then, of late, we've seen TransNamib being plagued by a number of accidents, and it would speak to the safety element. What has been done to improve the safety to ensure that your locomotives are not involved in any accidents going forward? And how concerned are you that more assets and lives should not be lost going forward? Of course, we know of the one fatality, but just to sort of avoid such a situation playing itself out again.
Yeah, so there's a combination of 3 factors normally which cause these derailments, and these derailments are not new. I mean, derailments has been happening on an annual basis. and certain matters are being put in place. It is just for a company that hasn't been spending sufficient amount of money in terms of safety and improving that. That is all biggest one of the biggest concerns. So there are certain actions that we have put in place and that we are working on in terms of putting in place. The three main reasons derailments, of course, is the rail infrastructure, and a lot of the rail infrastructure still needs to be upgraded. Although government has invested a good sum of money, there are plans also to do further upgrades, and the current big project is between Kransberg and Walvis Bay to improve the situation. But there's also a process in place of ensuring that we monitor that process to pick up challenges in advance. The second one, of course, is the rolling stock, and to bear in mind that most of the locomotives that we do have are more than 50 years old. So there's also a lot of challenges with it because there hasn't been sufficient cash that we have generated up till now at proper maintenance to some of the locomotives. And of course, the third element is the human element of human error, which is, of course, addressed through our internal processes. But at the end of the day, there's also a major sequence of events that sometimes lead to some of these accidents that we are addressing at the moment, and will put matters in place to ensure that we provide that sort of advance precaution on making sure that accidents and derailments are minimized as far as we can.
And then a last question, Mr. Smith, is just sort of, I want to hone in terms of now the intricacies involved, your relationship with the board, your relationship with government, with your line ministry. Is there enough support to ensure from government level and from board level that that the turnaround can successfully be implemented?
Yeah, I would believe the support is there. Of course, like any other company, TransNamib also has got its challenges, and we are addressing these matters. And all the parties are informed of the challenges on a regular basis in terms of TransNamib, our financial situation, and also, of course, we can't just take problems to the board and the ministry. We also need to provide solutions. And that's why we have come up with a short-term plan so that we can build up the capacity so that we can improve our situation as TransNamib. I just also want to add the earlier question on the finance. Yes, we must probably had meetings with more than 150 or more than 150 meetings with banks, but nobody wants to fund the company. There's so many legacy issues, and that doesn't prove its financial strength, and this is the challenge that we to move beyond the bridge, and the bridge is what is taking us so long, because nobody really wants to assist us to the extent that we require in terms of the historical sort of debt that TransNamib had over a period of time.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Evening Review.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us again on the Evening Review, Mr. Smith.
Thank you for having me.
Yesterday was a landmark announcement in which you had announced that you'd secured $2.6 billion for the implementation of your business plan. How do you intend to deploy the $2.6 billion?
Yeah, the $2 billion, over $2 billion is earmarked mainly for our rolling stock. We will have to fix about 33 of our old locomotives and make them new. And then we will also then acquire about 10 new locomotives within the next 3 years. That's the predominant part of the funds will be utilized for that.
Looking at other issues that relate to TransNamib, one would assume that attention needs to be given to the rail network, although that is the responsibility of government. And then there are other assets that you would probably also look at upgrading and acquisition of other assets that you probably do not have at this stage. If one has to put a number to it, what do you need to transform in TransNamib?
Yeah, of course, we have a significant backlog in terms of maintenance as TransNamib, but this funding is going to give us that jumpstart in terms of focusing on the most important part of our business, which is the rolling stock part, the locomotives and wagons. And therefore, through this process, we have to become more accountable and responsible as an institution and as a company to then utilize this funding to generate other funding in order to provide to those other needs in terms of being a rail operator.
Coming back off the back of the COVID-19 pandemic, in what financial state is TransNamib at this point in time?
Yeah, we are not in a very good state at the moment. This is why this project is a medium to long-term project. We are fortunate that we have, after 4 years, it's taken some time for us to source this funding. And of course, it's not like we're getting 2.6 billion just in the bank like that. There's a lot of conditions to it and the process that needs to be followed in terms of tendering, and etc. So we have to make sure that for the other needs that we then also look at other short-term funding to assist us in terms of the short-term to get out of the other troubles that we are in. But the most important is that we need to develop TransNamib now to become more accountable and responsible so that we can create sustainability for the company.
There's the issue of the Challenge Air that recently came. How much of a bearing has that had on the company's operations going forward, given now that they've met threats that they also did to previous subsidiaries of TransNamib Air Namibia?
Yeah, already when the document only lands 3 days after it was seen by media, it is already a question mark on it. So at TransNamib, we are not going to entertain this at all because we were not part of this this matter as TransNamib, and we will defend it if we need to defend it in the most appropriate way. But this is a complete separate matter, and we continue with doing our business the way that we've been doing and focusing on improving TransNamib.
There have been safety concerns. We've seen massive, various derailments that have occurred. What is being done to address that?
Yeah, so there are various reasons for derailments. And the two main reasons for derailments, which has happened over the past few years, which is also not new, derailments happen everywhere on railways globally. But specifically, the issue of railway infrastructure and also the state of and the condition of our rolling stock, that you can just imagine some of our locomotives are more than 60 years old, or the biggest portion of it is 16 years old, more than 60 years old. So maintenance has been also a challenge. So these are matters that we will have to address over a period of time by investing the required funds so that we can improve on that. Of course, there are certain precautions that we have put in place and that we are continuously putting in place to ensure that we minimize any accident or derailment for that matter.
And then lastly, Mr. Smith, how would you describe the state of TransNamib's operations at this point in time? At what capacity are you operating, and what are you looking at improving?
Yeah, at this stage, our biggest challenge is that we do not have sufficient locomotives on a daily basis to move the freight that is there to move, because these locomotives always break down. So what we are focusing on now is to see how we can fix some of the others in terms of some of the cash that is made available from time to time, or that is available from time to time, so that we can run more trains and move more freight, so that our cash flow position improves. But yes, it's a daily challenge, but we are trying to find ways to see how we can improve it. It's not going to improve significantly over the short term, but between the short and medium term, as we invest more, run more trains, move more freight, we will be able to transform this company into a sustainable company.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Evening Review.
Thank you so much for having me.